Hey Computer, play About Bees podcast.
Well, hello everybody, and welcome back again to another episode of About Bees, Culture, and Curiosity. This is Ron Miksha with
Bidzina, Mosiashvili.
And Bidzina. What do we have on the go today?
Today we have a very special guest coming all the way from BC, virtually.
Virtually BC?
Yeah.
So it's not really BC. Hi, Steve.
Ron, Bidzina, pleased to be with you.
Oh man, it's a pleasure for us. Really, it's all on us. So thank you so much for making time for this, and you have quite a story to tell. And I'll just briefly say that I've known you for over 40 years, and the last time I saw you was 37 years ago.
Right.
And yeah, it was. And it's just fantastic to actually see you again and see that you're looking so good. We have some pictures of when you were a youngster, and I showed them to my wife, and then I showed her your picture today, and she goes, "Man, you really improved."
It might have been the hat, Ron. It might have been the hat.
No, man. Well, that was quite the hat. So, yeah. And we've known each other that long from back in Saskatchewan. And right. I do want to cover a little bit of what Saskatchewan beekeeping was like for you. But in the last few years, you've moved out to the west coast of British Columbia, Canada. And right. There you are raising queen cells and selling them and producing and selling nukes. So that, again, is going to be an amazing story because we don't usually think of raising queen cells anywhere other than Texas, Florida, or California in North America. So I really want to hear about that. So if you don't mind, I must have missed a few parts of your story. So before we start the actual images, then I'd like to have you talk a little bit more about where you grew up and how you grew up.
I was born in Fargo, North Dakota. My parents bought a restaurant out in Bismarck, Mandan, North Dakota when I was 9 years old. Grew up there. Had a short but fun stint in university. I majored in fraternity and minored in bridge, which worked for a little while. Then I got drafted into the U.S. Army. Did 2 years there. And as I told you a bit ago, I visited an old Army buddy in Tucson, Arizona, and he wanted to get some honeybees. So I went together with him to a Tucson area beekeepers meeting and met a great old gentleman who also happened to be originally from North Dakota. He took us out and showed us his few hives of bees, and that was it. I was taken, and that's what set me off and that got me doing the bees ever since.
Man, that's amazing how easy it is to get bitten by that bee bug. And since we're going to go there and talk about those days right after you met this friend of yours in Tucson and met up with the North Dakota beekeeper. So I'm going to start sharing my screen here. All right. So this is what I called it, Steve Clifford raising queens in BC. But first of all, we're going to see North Dakota and Texas raising Steve Clifford. So now I started with this picture, and I assumed that this was your place in Saskatchewan, just probably about the time you were leaving it.
That's right. That's right. Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about where this is, and then we're going to go to some of the old pictures of you.
It was probably some of the best honey producing area in North America. It was right at the very top of the farmland and on the southern fringe of the Great Boreal Forest. What's interesting is this farmland was really only moved into during the Great drought of the 1930s. I knew so many farmers there who had moved up there. Their parents had moved up there from southern Saskatchewan, the Dakotas, Minnesota. They were dried out, and they moved up into the bush country there and started farming. There was moose and berries to eat, and it was a lot wetter country than the prairies further south. So it was quite new farmland, and it was a gorgeous place to be.
So when you say new farmland, that means these settlers that went in during the 30s, they basically had to clear the land, clear the trees off. And then, yeah. So can you describe that a little bit? You probably saw, like when I lived in northern Saskatchewan briefly, a couple of years, I was in the Big River area, which is straight to the west of where you were, but a few hours west. I was actually seeing some of this land creation while I was there, and you must have too.
The stories were rampant about the original folks cutting the trees down, pulling the roots with horses. If you can imagine, if you can picture that. I had bees on one elderly couple's farm, and I remember her telling me about the first summer they managed to clear 6 acres by hand and with horses, and they got in, they planted 6 acres of oats, and they were so grateful they had enough feed to get their horses through that first winter. I mean, that, you know.
So how were they working together with the horses to clear the land?
Well, I'm sure there were no chainsaws in those days. They cut the trees down by hand, and then they would dig and expose the roots, and then hook a team of horses up to the tree stumps and physically pull them out.
Oh, wow.
And they would burn. When I was first there were areas that had been burning for years. The fire would go down into the roots, and in the wintertime, you could see the smoke in the same fields for years. It was an amazing place to end up, for sure.
And do you think, Steve, that because it was such new land and they had just freshly plowed it and all that, that this might have made it better for honey production?
I think that may be true, Ron. Yeah. They grew a lot of clover, but when rapeseed came, they called it the Cinderella crop. And you know about rapeseed. It was a cool weather crop, so it was right at home there. It was a quick growing, maturing crop, so it suited that area well, and it was a fantastic honey producer. The nectar was way higher in sugar than the average clover or whatever else you're talking about, and it made honey in a hurry. Mm-hmm. The town I lived in had a crushing plant right there, so I think the standard was every field was rapeseed every other year. It was, and they grew a lot of clover as well, so it was fantastic honey area. Sure was.
Wow.
Sorry,
yeah, go ahead.
What was the average crop yield you were getting for your beehives? In that
150 pound average was sort of ho-hum. It was good to get up around 200 pounds. I always think about 1984. We were wintering bees by then. I had several hundred hives wintered. They came through really well. I had 1,800 hives in total. And I filled something over 700 drums, 700 pound drums of honey. It was right around 500,000 pounds, or a 300 pound average on 1,800 hives.
Wow.
That's fantastic. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, you were a brilliant beekeeper.
Well, I I don't know about brilliant, Ron, but I sure had fun. I sure had fun doing it.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was a
Yeah.
challenge, and there was always highs and lows, but I got so very lucky with the people that I broke in with. I couldn't have found a better company to break in and learn the business with. That's for sure.
We're going to talk about that, let you talk about that in just a minute, but I want to get some kind of time context in the history here. So you did mention 1984. You also mentioned the draft that was during the Vietnam War.
Right.
You must be a couple of years older than me, because the year I graduated high school is 1972. And people who graduated from high school in 1972 were not drafted. It had ended that year. And you were kind of like on the very tail end of that, weren't you?
Unfortunately, yes. I got drafted in 1970 in the very last draft. They had 365 little plastic capsules, and they put the every day of the year into each
Big
one of
drum.
I watched it on television. They spun the drum. They picked them out one at a time, and I was lucky enough to come out number 56.
You knew you'd be wearing a uniform before you knew it. Yeah.
I was gone in a few weeks. Yeah.
Oh, man.
I got very fortunate, Ron. I remember taking those tests they give you, those not IQ tests, but those they give you.
Very similar. Very similar.
Well, they sent me to stenography school. I learned stenography, and I ended up working in the Pentagon. Spent my whole tour working in the basement of the Pentagon. That's all I can tell you. And that was it. I went home. Yeah.
That was really lucky. Two of my older brothers were drafted. They're, obviously older than I am, and two of them were drafted during the war also. And neither of them had to go to Vietnam. So one was serving on the Panama Canal Zone at the U.S. Army base there. And the other one was seeing somewhat active duty because he was on the DMZ in Korea. And they actually had to go out on patrols and fire at each other, the North Koreans and my brother and his unit. But they both survived. They both made it back and spent their 2 years, serving the country in those roles. So congratulations on getting through it, learning a new skill. You still use your stenography?
Not too much. No.
I didn't think so.
No,
I didn't think so.
This policy could have changed. I could be wrong here, but I heard that in the U.S. for the when you're a soldier, you guys mentioned the IQ test. So the minimum requirement to get into the U.S. Army is you have to have an 80 IQ, 80 and above, and they say that about 10% of the U.S. population is below that. So that's significant. I don't know. I just thought that was a cool fact that I thought I would bring in. So that you have to have 80 and above to get in, but obviously there's specializations like the Air Force, working in the Pentagon, CIA, like those kind of things but they thought it was for everyone, but there's at least 10% of the people that don't actually qualify based on their IQ.
The fascinating thing I hear today is so many people can't pass the physical test. They're overweight.
That's a good point, actually. Yeah. How was the physical test, like the standards during your time compared to now? Would you, if you were?
They must have been really easy, Bidzina, because look at the picture we have up now of Steve with an elderly gentleman. And does he look like he would have passed any kind of a physical test?
Well,
sorry.
They were people were more hardy. Steve's right. Like there's a certain growing up in elementary and junior high and high school here, standards throughout the years would get less and less instead of increasing them, which was weird.
Yeah.
Here's what I always said about boot camp. They gave us lots of vaccinations, lots and lots. I have no idea what they were sticking in there, but we were always grateful to go to the clinic and line up for a vaccination, because that was one of the few times we ever got to stand still. Yeah.
Well,
It was physically a challenge.
Oh yeah.
We got in the bus to go, when it was over, we graduated, we got in the bus to go back to the airport, and the driver said, "You guys will never be in this kind of shape again in your lives." He said, "Feel your legs. You'll never be in that physical shape again." And I think I believed him. It was 8 weeks of working out. Yeah.
Right. But that really prepared you for handling supers later.
Well,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, you know yourself, Ron. If you don't like picking up heavy things, don't be a beekeeper.
Don't be a beekeeper.
Don't be a beekeeper.
No, you look great. Tell me a little bit about these pictures here. What are we seeing? I love the lampshade. Where did you buy that?
I got a lot of grief about that bee hat, but it worked okay.
Yeah.
I'm standing next to a wonderful old gentleman, Irvin Gunter. Irvin was an incredible guy. He was the son of a beekeeper from Germany. They immigrated when Irvin was young. I wish I could remember the name of the honey packing plant he worked in Ohio. But he told me this story more than once. He was working at this honey packing plant, and they got a shipment of honey in from Minnesota. And he took one look at that and he said, "Man, I got to go there." And he told me about driving out to Minnesota, probably in a Model A truck, with all the bee equipment he could carry. He said there were times when he had to unload half, go up the hill, unload the rest, go back down to the bottom of the hill. Yeah. But I also told you when in the Depression in the 30s, when men were riding the rails and looking for a job, Irvin was flying his own airplane and running a couple thousand hives of bees.
And same gentleman we're seeing here, right here. So he started out an immigrant child,
right,
and worked for somebody in honey packing, saw this gorgeous, beautiful white honey. And
right.
He must have been keeping a few hives of bees in Ohio, because you say he had equipment to take out to the west.
Yeah. But he ended up in Erskine, Minnesota, in northwestern Minnesota, eventually moved out to central North Dakota, right around Minot. And when I met his two sons, they were running 9,000 hives of bees in North Dakota. This picture was taken down in Texas. Irvin worked till the day he passed away. He just couldn't.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Wow.
What else is there to do?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He was
a wonderful old guy. He sure was. He was terrific. Yeah. I told you he was a co-founder of Sioux Honey Association.
Yeah. And that's the world's largest honey packer even today.
When I shipped to Sioux, I think they were packing somewhere north of 80 million pounds a year in the U.S. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. Well, they would have loved the honey you would have been sending down from Saskatchewan.
There
would have been some beautiful white honey that you were producing. Yep. So, whoops, I just flipped past here. So I like this picture. I'm not sure what's going on, but I like the old log cabin in the back, and I see a lampshade again, so that must be you.
The guy waving is the great bee partner that I had, Larry Gunter. That's Irvin's son. For many, many years, Larry and I took flying fishing trips to northern Saskatchewan, northern Manitoba. We had just stopped on the beach for lunch probably, and we're checking out this trapper's cabin. Those trappers would have gone in the fall, spent the whole winter there trapping, and headed home in the spring.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, those were great trips. They'd fly you in, drop you off, and say if the weather's okay, we'll see you in 5 days. They
Wow.
were great trips. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Quite some memories. Now, this is Larry Gunter.
Right.
And I do remember that he died tragically very young.
Yeah, it was a shame. He was 46, and as I told you, he was president of the American Beekeeping Federation, and
Mhm.
he was a wonderful guy.
Yeah. 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 It was a shame that happened.
Yeah.
That accident. And yeah. So now we're somewhere where there's snow, which could be anywhere in Canada or pretty much over all the West, depending on season.
That's me in the old 73 bee truck. This picture was taken in North Dakota. We were headed down to Texas. This is probably like January, February. Yeah.
So this truck, we're looking at a truck for people who are listening to this as a podcast. We are looking at a truck parked in a suburban area with several houses next to it on a street. And the truck is this 73, I think it's a Chevy.
It's a Chevy, yeah.
Yeah, the 73 Chevy. And it has a huge van on the back of it. And in the very back end, it says Live Bees, which I think is a lie. Am I right?
Well,
You're heading south, right?
right, but you know.
Oh, okay. We won't talk any more about that one. Although I think the statute of limitations has probably run out on smuggling bees back to the USA. But I love it. I love it. That's so somebody is peeking in the back end of that truck. So I guess they probably were looking for signs of life.
Well, that was a hired guy of mine and myself. I think I
Mhm.
might still have that bad hat on, but yeah.
It looks like it. Yeah, I hope you kept that hat.
No, it's long gone, Ron. It's long.
Oh, that's too bad. That's too bad.
So-
Now,
so-
yeah, go ahead, Bidzina.
No, go ahead.
I'm waiting for you. Go.
Oh
go,
no, I
go.
was just gonna say. So this truck here, it's a ventilated truck. So it's a cube van, or what is? Did you make a custom cube van yourself, or what?
No, that was built especially for hauling packages.
Okay.
You can't see it, but it had a rack over the top of the cab where we mounted a gas generator,
Mm.
and it had two squirrel cage fans mounted at the very top for when things got really tough. If you had to stop when it was hot, and you can see all the vents going along the side. There's two vents in the back on top and two more on the bottom.
And the walls, they are like it's aluminum or it's a carbon. What type of wall and how thick are they?
It was just plywood.
Okay.
Just plywood walls that we had a rack back at the shop where we rolled that thing off, and so the truck was a flat deck truck that we used for hauling honey. But when it was time to go to Texas, we rolled that van on, bolted it down, and it became a package hauler.
Yeah, no, it looks very factory made.
Well, Larry's brother made that. He was a pretty handy character. He built that by hand.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Very cool.
It held about 1,200 2-pound packages. We had a thermometer put on the dash. They were 4 thermometers that went back, and I remember reading that thing a million times. You could turn it, you could see what the temperature was, high in the front, high in the back, and low in the, you could really tell just what was going on back there. Package
Right.
bees were such a fragile thing. Oof. Yeah.
Did
What?
Steve? Did you ever use water to cool the load off?
I used ice more than once. Stopped at
Okay.
truck stops and bought bags of ice,
Mhm.
chucked them in there. Yeah.
Hmm.
The key thing
I
was
used
to
to have
keep
a, pardon?
the key when things were warm was to not stop. Just keep
That's for sure. That's for sure.
dry,
Yep.
keep air flowing
Yeah.
through
I
there.
used to make that same drive from Florida to southern Saskatchewan, and it was, and usually by myself. But I had a garden hose
Ah,
that was mounted like a sprinkler hose, mounted on the top of my van,
right.
and uh, and that was a homemade van. It was not this elegant or this big. It did have the air vents and so on, but it was all, I built it out of plywood, and I had a string for hosing the bees down, and man, did that take the temperature down in a hurry.
Yeah.
You know, you could hear them screaming in the boxes. You turn on that water, it never hurt them, so I wasn't drowning them. It was just cooling everything off. So pull into a truck stop and ask where I can get some, connect my garden hose and over
Right.
there, and
Right.
yeah. So, but I did hear about one beekeeper whom I do not know, but old Earl MD told me about this guy that he was driving up from Texas, and he stopped overnight, and in the morning he tapped on the side of his box, and he didn't hear anything, so he thought, okay, they're nice and quiet. They were all dead.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. That's, yeah. Mine, I could only haul about 600, so it was only half the size of what you've got here. But man, what a job. What a task to be driving that load like you did.
It was always challenging. Yeah, it was challenging.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah,
So,
no, this is very wild. It is my least favorite part of beekeeping. All that and lifting heavy things.
yeah.
People are always astounded when I talk about the changes, but when I went to Saskatchewan and took over a 1,500 hive, 30-year-old, two-generation bee outfit, they had never ever wintered a hive of bees. As soon as the honey was extracted, they went around with the cyanide gun, killed them all off, took the brood chambers in, scraped them up, got them ready for next year. And when the time came, they went to California and bought packages. That's just the way it was done.
Right.
But I hit there about the revolution because we had the Africanized bee threat coming and the two different parasitic mites. So that really kicked off the change to overwinter bees.
And so that practice, is it still happening? It's not going on anymore, correct?
Oh, no, long gone.
Right, right. And what time period did that stop when the importing of packages, widespread importing of packages stopped from US? Is that when it stopped?
I got to Saskatchewan in 76 and people were just starting to winter. By the mid 80s, the argument to close the border was roaring. And I think the last year I hauled packages out of Texas was 1986. The border closed in chunks. I went to California the next spring and got a load of packages in 1987. And as I remember, that was it.
Okay. Because I was talking to someone and I said that. I'm like, yeah, commercial beekeepers used to just kill their bees for winter. And then I was thinking back to it and I'm like, I don't think that's going on anymore. And I actually don't know when it stopped. But thank you for giving me the facts there.
Right.
Yeah, it's been about 40 years. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But that wasn't practice. That was definitely going on where they would just kill their bees before winter.
Well, they would die over winter anyway.
Yeah.
So we didn't like I also missed the big, like like from the time I arrived in Saskatchewan, I was wintering bees because the outfit I bought was wintering bees already. But I look back at that and I often wonder if a lot of Western Canadian beekeeping wouldn't be better off if we were still killing the bees in the fall and bringing in packages, because we wouldn't be treating any chemicals for mites at all. They wouldn't have time to build up during the summer. And your equipment always got stored inside. You didn't have winter feed, so you weren't, mixing sugar in with the bees to feed on. And even today, with winter losses around 30% for the most part, you can't. Yeah, you might make a little bigger honey crop, but they were consistently making. You look at Homer Parks up in the Peace River country. He always averaged close to 300 pounds from packages every year.
Yeah.
And so you can't really say that the crop wasn't good enough. It was just a political event that people decided to stick it to the folks who are raising packages. Yeah.
The argument was ferocious. I got caught deep in the middle because I was working in Texas, bringing up a couple thousand packages every year, and B, I was president of the Saskatchewan Beekeepers Association at that time, so I was really caught in the middle of the argument. And the argument,
yeah, that's tough on you. Yep.
beekeepers who had been good friends previous were now standing up in meetings and yelling at each other. That's what I remember. The argument was amazing. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
And here we are now. We're back to importing 250,000 California queens into Canada every year. Yeah, it's odd.
Well, let's yeah. So we didn't really achieve self-sufficiency, not for the numbers we need, but you are engaged in producing queens, and we're going to talk about that in just a couple of minutes. But first, I just have a few more pictures that are a little more up to date, and one of them we're looking at. It looks like an awfully good colony of bees that you've got open.
Right. That's how you wanted them all to look.
This is Saskatchewan yet, right?
Saskatchewan in the spring. I think we were just unpacking, and it's still amazing to me that they can come through 5-6 months of winter, temperatures -30, -40, and look like that, but they sure could.
There you go.
Yeah. And in the picture there, it looks like, do you have a hard hat on? Is that a hard hat?
I do. When there's forklifts and things going up and down, I was happy to have a hard hat on every once in a while.
Okay, so that wasn't for the bees.
No. I did joke, Bidzina, that when we were working down in Texas, and we went to the bar after a day of working bees, we fit in better when we had hard hats on, because there was all those oil field guys down there, and we had kind of, I'm kidding.
It's a good point, actually.
Yeah.
Because anytime someone sees me in a beekeeping suit, they think I'm escaping from jail or something. I got a jumpsuit on.
Well, it's funny, but I'm still wearing that hard hat.
Yeah.
Still wearing the same one.
So that one was a keeper.
Same one. Okay.
Yeah.
You still have the hard hat. Yeah.
Still have the hard hat.
Oh wow! Look at that.
That
They're
picture
just rolling.
That would have been in early April, I think. You can see the snows. It's melted around the hives because the sun's bouncing off those black wraps and melting the snow. But boy, when you can get them looking like that, you're in business. We had to split those hives looking like that, or they'd never stay home, right? It would take take many, take quite a few frames of brood away from hives like that during the course of the spring
to keep them from swarming.
Right.
Yeah. And at that time, were you importing queens, or were you producing your own queens?
Oh, I raised my own queens up there, and in the later years, I sold quite a few thousand queens every spring to guys making nukes. And
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
it's interesting when I look at this picture, I look at that raw fiberglass insulation.
Oh, love it.
Yeah, that's right.
Somewhere along the line, I think it was a beekeeper from Alberta who was wintering bees with this raw insulation. And he sent, I think it was Germany. I think they sent a truckload or a load of barrels of honey over to Germany, and they found fiberglass leftovers in it. And that put an end to using that raw fiberglass. After that, we started putting the fiberglass into honey barrel liners, actually, plastic liners, and yeah.
Yeah, that was pretty rough stuff. That I hated working with that myself. It just was so scratchy, itchy. Plus, trying to hold everything down, on a windy day, you got to get them wrapped. That was quite a nuisance. But
you looked in the air, and you could see what you were breathing in because the dust.
Oh
would be, you were breathing that stuff in.
Yep. Yeah. So, along with that, here is another set, a quad, 4 hives, all tucked nicely up against each other, and the insulation rolled back. Your bees just wintered amazingly. These are fantastic colonies, Steve.
Yeah. Well, here's another interesting tidbit. We talked about that equipment that had never been overwintered. I think that when we started wintering bees in that, they did fabulously well. And as the years went by, colonies died, pooped on that comb. It got worse. It didn't. It got worse as time went on because that pristine equipment that had never been wintered in, the bees responded really well in it.
Right.
Okay, so the newer the old bees leave a lot of stuff on the old equipment there. The old equipment is
when a hive died, they would often poop it up, and I'm sure the nosema count was there, and
viruses.
So would you? How often would you replace your equipment? Every so years, or?
Well, no, back then, we used combs forever and ever, especially the brood combs. But
right, okay.
Yeah, the theory was for a long time, Bidzina, the theory was that the best combs for the queen were the old ones, and that was what people believed. And then also, you're basically living off your depreciation. If you have already paid for the equipment and you're not replacing it, then that's just a little bit more in the bank for you.
Yeah,
that's right.
But that's a really good point, Steve. I hadn't even thought of the fact that for the first few years, I remember people having amazing results, claiming, maybe not true, but claiming, 5% winter losses, but colonies like this, you have evidence of this in your photographs. It's just amazing. While we're looking at overwintering, and I just have a quick question for you. Would your colonies sometimes be totally covered in snow? Because the Nipawin area, I think, got a lot of snow over winter.
I think this picture, they were just wrapped up. The little pile of pails there were the last few that had pails on them. I would look really forward to that first accumulation of snow because we'd go out with scoop shovels and bank them up. And I felt that really helped. I remember going out in really, really cold weather, and those upper entrance holes would be frozen shut. And we'd go out with scoop shovels and bank snow around each pallet, and you'd go look the next day and they'd be thawed out. That had
the entrances on top.
It wouldn't be frozen anymore. Poof, so you could really tell that made a big difference.
So, so you were out there actually literally shoveling more snow onto the colonies, because I've seen pictures and talked to newer beekeepers usually who feel really concerned about their bees. Will they get enough air? Should I go out there? And I've even seen pictures where people are scratching away the snow in front of their hives to try to give the bees, more airflow, but that's just the opposite of what you want to do.
When the wind would blow, it would blow all the snow away from the bottoms of those pallets. And when we banked them up, I really feel like blocking the airflow underneath that pallet made a huge difference to the inside temperature. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And where is this bee yard location? Is this in Canada or is US?
That's in northern Saskatchewan. That was a beautiful yard that actually used to be a fire tower. There was a little cabin there where the fire tower watchman lived all summer. Yeah.
And that Jeep you got there, that would be your patrol Jeep, or would you also use it to carry bees and stuff?
It would get me around when nothing else would after big rains. And I'm glad you asked about that Jeep. I was 13 years old when my father bought that Jeep new. Somewhere in the 1990s, he phoned me up and said, "You might as well come and get the Jeep. I can't get my belly behind the steering wheel anymore." I still have it today. It's in showroom condition, and I love having it. Yeah.
No, and you got a winch on it at the front there. That's is that a winch? Or?
That little winch just above the bumper is for a snow blade.
Okay.
I mentioned Mom and Dad had a restaurant in North Dakota. Well, he bought that Jeep to plow the snow off the parking lot. And it's got a tow bar. You can hook it up to any vehicle with a trailer hitch, put everything in neutral, and drag it down the highway.
They don't make it like this anymore.
They made that model for 20 years. They made something like 600,000 of those. That's a CJ5, yeah.
Jeep CJ5.
Right.
Okay.
And it's sitting right outside here, and I still drive it a fair bit.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
Well, you would need something like that, not just because there's snow and you've got to get in, but I remember the roads being what we would call gumbo, like just clay and just so slick even after a light rain.
Yeah.
Some of the roads would be graveled.
Mm-hmm.
And lots of them were not graveled. And we were always tempted to put bee yards in nice spots, but after a rain, those roads were impassable for a couple of 3 days. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, those were the days. Now there's probably all paved over.
Well, I doubt if they're paved out there, but yeah.
Yeah. But what do we have going on here? You're feeding some bees.
Looks like the first go through, we would leave the packing on. We would go through them, feed the ones that look like they could use it, and in those little 1-gallon pails, and put the insulation back over till the nights quit freezing, which there in northern Saskatchewan was probably early June.
Wow.
Yeah.
You were still getting frost, like say the 5th or 10th of June, it could still freeze.
Yeah, we'd get snow. We'd get snow into the second, third week of May quite often.
Right.
So yeah, we would go through, feed them, treat them for whatever, and put that insulation right back on.
Right. So folks who are listening again, I'd like to describe this just a little bit. And we're at an apiary, and there's a pump. It looks like it's gas powered or something. So a gas powered pump on the ground, and a big tank which probably held 500 gallons or something. Maybe
no, it's 100. It's a 100-gallon tank.
100-gallon tank. Okay. 100-gallon tank, and that would serve to feed like one location, wouldn't it? Like one or two locations, you'd have used up that whole tank.
Yeah, but
Yeah. And
here's
then yeah, in the picture, then there's the tank on the back of a truck, the pump on the ground, and a gentleman holding, or a gentle lady, holding a hose and filling up a container and several packs of colonies. These are quads again, 4 hives next to each other, and they're open. You can see the insulation, the fiberglass blowing in the air, and then these pails are going to go on to the hives.
right.
Mhm. And what's the shack in the back there? That's interesting.
That's just an old forgotten grain bin.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the farmer hadn't burned yet.
Yeah.
And I can tell you, Ron, that I still have that tank and I still have that little Honda pump, and I'm still using them.
All right.
Yeah, that's right.
That's really cool. Well, that's a real beekeeper. You hang on to everything that works for as long as you can.
Darn right. Yeah.
Yeah. How many trips did you make when you moved out to BC? Like you had to make a few trips to bring that pump and the trucks and the feeders and.
I sure did. Yeah. The first couple of years, I made a lot of trips. Yeah.
And I'm just trying to figure or guess, but 1,500 kilometers one way.
I don't think it's quite that far. Maybe 1,200.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think Calgary's was about halfway, or maybe
Mm-hmm.
not quite yet.
Okay. Now we've moved indoors.
Yeah.
So the picture here is someone who looks a little bit like you. I'd say roughly 40 years old, 45 years old, somewhere around that
Somewhere
age.
in there, yeah. Somewhere in there.
Doing some holding a frame of brood and a grafting needle, and this was in Saskatchewan too, then, wasn't it? Because you said you were raising queens there.
I sold quite a few queen cells in Saskatchewan. People mostly making splits, but
Mhm.
there were a few people that still use that requeening method, where in mid-early July you'd put a ripe queen cell in a overwintered hive, hoping that they would that would supersede the queen.
Okay, I know
And
you're in
it
the
looks.
business of. I'm sorry. Yes,
No, go ahead. You're in the business.
you're in the business of raising and selling queen cells, but did you think that was a very effective way of requeening?
Well, it's funny. That was one of the arguments used by the Let's Close the Border team.
I remember.
The antis were, well, where are we going to get queens? How can we can't raise queens up here in time. It's too late. It's too cold. So this requeening with queen cells was sort of prompted as one of the solutions. Well, I got urged to apply for a provincial government grant to do some work on this, and I got the money. One of the things we did was I marked queens in 100 colonies, and we put ripe queen cells in those colonies for 3 summers, and we kept really close track. I think 7% switch was the highest we got, whereas the people promoting this were claiming, oh, it's going to work 80% of the time.
Mm-hmm. I remember your paper and or your results, and people didn't broadcast your results very widely.
No, and that 7% included swarming and natural supersedure. So,
Oh yeah, you wouldn't know, would you? You would just
No.
know that there's a different unmarked queen in there.
right, and I was astounded about how many of those marked queens we had left after 3 summers. It was amazing. There was lots of them.
And in the picture there, it looks like you got you have a frown there. Is that?
I was probably having a good time. I just didn't look like it. Yeah.
just concentrating. That's a concentration look.
Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
But-
Yeah.
And then you continued the queen breeding into in BC.
I don't sell a lot anymore. I sell some, but I'm only keeping 50 or 60 hives now, and I sell nukes and queen cells, but not a great deal.
Mm-hmm. So I have a headline newspaper clip up from, I think, 2022, if I remember correctly. And I apologize, I did not read this, but I will read the headline. It says, more than 1 million honeybee colonies, more than 1 million honeybees, not colonies, arrive on coast. So what's the background here?
Our bee club, which I'm tickled to be the president of.
What's the bee club name?
The Sunshine Coast Beekeepers Association is the official name. We
Okay.
do a club buy of New Zealand packages every spring. We drive over to Vancouver and get them off the airplane, and I'm sure that's what prompted this little
Right.
newspaper article.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So help me out with the math. Let's say 7,000 bees in a package, maybe.
There's about
And
4,000 to a pound, so yeah, 8,000 to a package.
Okay. And 1 million honeybees, then we're looking at somewhere, that's not even 1,000, is it? It's more than 1 million. It was probably more like 20 million, but 1 million is just such a nice big number so, and you're holding a frame in this picture that looks really good. It looks like it's got a nice population covering brood, and this would have been maybe April.
Yeah, they come quite early here. We get them in the first week of April, so.
Okay.
That location is a gorgeous place. It's a 15-year-old botanical garden. We have our bee club bee yard there, and we hold our bee club meetings, and it's a wonderful place for our bee club to meet. So very grateful to have that to use.
Where did you move to BC to do beekeeping?
About 9 years ago.
9 years ago, okay. And you moved all your operations there?
No, I had an auction sale and sold most of it.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so the Sunshine Coast Beekeepers Association, did you start that, or you also you were able to secure the presidentship for that?
No, I didn't start it. It's been going on some 20 years, I think, but I was fortunate enough and honored to be the president. Yeah.
Wow. Very impressive.
So I don't know what I missed in my absence, but unfortunately I had left my cell phone on, and I got a call, and the recording went on, and it just interfered with my headset. And I have to have a headset on because I've got so much noise going on around me here. So apologize for that. It sounds like you guys were talking about the bee club itself.
Right. Yep.
And what did I overhear? Like missed hearing that like 1,000 members on the West Coast there who are beekeepers?
No, we have about 50 some members in our Sunshine Coast Bee Club.
That's a lot. It's a lot. So tell us where Sunshine Coast is, like in relationship to, say, Vancouver, which a lot of people know.
We're north of Vancouver, and we're across the strait from Vancouver Island. We can see Vancouver Island from where we are. But the Sunshine Coast is a great name. I think maybe some realtor might have dreamed that up to embellish.
And is it Yeah, it's not sunshiny.
Well, sure it is. Yeah, it does rain, but as you know, the old saying is, we don't have to shovel it, Ron. That's
yeah.
When it does snow here, they take pictures. That's That's the way I look at it.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
And how long would it take you to drive, like, let's say, from your place into the outskirts of Vancouver?
Well, the T-shirts here all say it's not an island, but we can't drive off. We have to take a ferry, right? So
Oh, what? Really?
yeah. It's not accessible from the mainland by highway. So we take a ferry, 45-minute ferry ride, and then Vancouver's another 20, 30-minute drive.
Okay, so roughly an hour away from the big city.
Yeah,
If you time your getting onto the ferry and everything correctly.
that's right. That's right.
Yeah.
But we are sort of, compared to Vancouver, we're out in the country, that's for sure.
Mm-hmm. 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 Okay. I want to move ahead here a little bit with a picture that is from a video that you star in, and it's very, very well filmed. So the pictures that I excerpted from that video are not that good a quality. I just did screen catches, but I thought that this video, which is called "Raising Queen Bee Cells" with Steve Clifford, I thought that this would be a great outline where you could explain to us what you're doing now in BC and how it's been working out. The first image that we have up is the title screen from this video, and there will be links in the show notes, and I would really encourage people to watch this. This has been a very popular YouTube video about how you raise queen bees in what I would consider one of the most difficult places to raise queens anywhere. And you're specializing in cells, and I'm just going to go out on a limb and guess that good weather for mating queens is probably a little rare where you are. But raising the queen cells, you could do.
Yeah. They seem to mate well here. We can sure get going early. We can get going in the middle of April, which is far different than where I was in Saskatchewan. Interesting.
Yeah, go ahead. No, when you say far earlier, so you're talking about grafting probably in
mid-April. Yeah, mid-April.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the drones are hatching here by mid-April, and
yeah,
the way I learned it, that's you don't start grafting until that first flush of drones starts to hatch. Right.
Yep, because they take a while to mature, and then you've got your queen cells opening up that 10 or 12 days after you've grafted. So, yeah.
That puts
all right. So I grabbed a picture here, which really, I apologize, is not a very high quality, but it's a frame that you are holding, and it shows your grafting stock mother queen. And I love the look of her coloration. And can you tell us anything about the background, the pedigree of what you were raising here?
I just, when I wintered in Saskatchewan, I would mark the hives that really wintered well and keep an eye on them. And the ones that really produced honey well were my breeders for the next year.
Mm-hmm.
I brought a couple of handfuls of those hives out here, and I'm still using them.
Wow. Yeah. Well, so this would be a third or fourth generation removed from Saskatchewan, but I'm guessing again, but would you say you're in kind of an isolated area? It's nowhere near like Nippo and Saskatchewan, which at one time had about 50,000 colonies of bees scattered around nearby the city between Tisdale and Nippo and in Carrot River and all that area.
That's right. It was the bees were about as thick as you could get them.
Yeah. And now you're in an area where if you are breeding, your stock is probably, you know what you're doing, and you're saturating with drones. You're making sure you have the drone population coming from your own breeder stock.
Right.
Yeah.
Most of the beekeepers here one or two hives. There's a few with 20, 30. That's about it. So,
Mhm.
yeah.
Mhm. So while we're talking about these beekeepers, do they make much honey?
40, 50 pounds is a good
Mhm.
result here. There's virtually very little agriculture. Happily, we have a plant here called the Himalayan blackberry. It's an invasive blackberry that got here somehow, and I'm very grateful because it's a wonderful honey plant. But
Mhm.
if that blackberry wasn't here, it'd be really tough to produce some honey. I like the two queen to give an extra kick to the honey production here. I do a few at the botanical garden where that you saw that picture where we have
Right.
our bee
From
meetings.
the newspaper. Yep.
Yeah. I went to the trouble to weigh the results from one of my two queen hives there 2 summers ago. It made 259, so that's a pretty good result.
That's a huge amount of honey for that
And
area. That's
for this area.
incredible.
Yeah.
It'd be like making 600 pounds back in Saskatchewan.
429 was the biggest one I ever had in Saskatchewan that I went to the trouble to
Yeah,
weigh.
to wait out.
Yeah.
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 Wow. So there's your queen. She looks beautiful. She looks can you describe the color of this queen?
She's mid dark. She's not really super dark, but she's sort of yeah. I like a little color. I'm not a fan of those bright yellow ones. That's for sure. A little color is good.
Yeah.
And
And
why?
not yeah.
Oh no, I just wondered why is that observation? Why have you made that observation?
That might be a hangover from my Saskatchewan days. We always felt the darker queens overwintered better than those bright yellow California queens. Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And this is part of your cell building colony.
Right. That'd be the queen right portion. I learned a real simple. I know a lot of cells are raised with a starter and a finisher, but the way I learned it, we just use a single hive, split it with a double screen, queen right portion and the starter, and then put it back together 24 hours after you graft, and works really, really well.
So it's one hive, one queen, but we're going to walk through some of those steps and you can describe them in more detail, but we could consider it to be a 2-story colony, although there's some modification to that too. And you make it so that one of the stories is queenless for a while, and that's where you'll start the cells.
Right. When you get it ready, the queen right portion with 9 frames of brood is on the bottom, and the queen cell portion's on the top. When you get it ready, you reverse them. You put the starter box for the cells at the bottom. You find the queen, shake a whole bunch of bees down into that bottom part that's queenless. It only has 2 heavy frames of honey and pollen and a feeder.
No brood at all, right?
No brood at all, no.
Okay.
And a lot of people think that's sort of odd, but that's the way we do it. It doesn't
And then
have. Go ahead.
It's got a huge population. It's queenless, and it's below the box above it has the queen in it.
Right.
So you've got a complete divide so that they can't interact at all.
Right.
And the bees, how long does it take the bees to realize they don't have a queen and want to raise queen cells?
Not very long. You can put the grafted cells in there virtually within minutes. you shake a lot of baby bees down off the frames of brood. Those baby bees are feeding larvae, and boom, it's like a cow you quit milking, right? All of a sudden they've got nowhere for that royal jelly to go, so they hit those cells right away.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
population is the whole thing for sure.
Right. Right. Yeah,
The
not
key
just for
is
heat, but just for the sense that they have no queen and they're crowded and they've got lots of bees there and they
that's
keep everything warm.
right.
Yeah.
So
So,
what we
sorry,
So
just to kind of
yeah.
summarize. So you would take a bunch of baby cells, B cells, and then put them in a queen grafting frame. And these little queen cells on the frame they're artificial, right? They're not yet formed into a full queen cell by the bees.
no
I
no
have
they,
some pictures. We have some pictures
Okay.
that might help answer that really clearly. The first picture is Steve pulling a frame out of a colony of bees, and it's just amazing that this breeder queen that you've chosen to graft from has filled the frame. Every cell from the top to the bottom has brood in it. Like there's and from one end bar to the other end bar, it's just so prolific. It's just and very few dead spots. It's just a beautiful frame of brood. And I just can't, like, you almost never will see a comb that has worker brood developing right at the first cell below the top bar and also right at the first cell above the bottom bar. It's just amazing. And this was your breeder stock. This is where you started off to graft from.
right. Yeah.
Just absolutely gorgeous. So you picked this off, so the picture on the left shows bees covering it, and there were a lot more bees covering that because you had already removed some of the bees, and then you took a brush and you made sure in the right-hand picture that we're looking at, because there are two photos up at the same time on the slide, you have swept off any excess bees, and now you've got a frame of brood larvae that you know the age of too. Is that correct?
Right.
The larvae.
And I'm brushing it because if you shake the bees off too hard, you disrupt that grafting material, which you don't want to do. So I give it a little shake to, and then brush it carefully. Otherwise, those graftable larvae are going to slump and go a little funny on you. So
it's gentle, everything very gentle. So we don't shake or jar those larvae that are developing.
Right.
I have this out of order, but we're looking at the picture where after you're grafting, the larvae is going to go. So this is a huge population of bees, just two frames. Is that right? Two frames in this box. This will
Right.
be the box that will be accepting the queen cells that you're grafting.
Right.
And here you are working at grafting.
Right.
So describe your technique here.
That's a handmade grafting tool. That's a brass rod. It was actually a core of a welding rod. And so that brass is really nice and easy to work with. Yeah. A good story about those JZBZ queen cell cups. When I first started raising queen cells down in Texas, we bought pure wax cups from some place called the Los Angeles Honey Company. And they were exactly the same shape as those plastic cups. And there's a good reason for that. I was down there several years raising queens, and we'd get those plastic cups. We'd just touch them in a warm frying pan and put them on the cell bar, and they would stick. And then we'd warm up a hive tool on that same frying pan and peel them off. Well, one spring we started grafting and they simply didn't work. We were getting like 10% hits. And so we had to know that the wax they were made of had to be contaminated somehow. Enter Jim Payson. Do you know about Jim Payson?
Yeah, I do. Wasn't he an aeronautics engineer or something like that?
He was a electronic systems engineer for Boeing aircraft.
Oh, okay.
And a hobby beekeeper.
Mm-hmm.
I got to know him in my years as a bee inspector for North Dakota. In his own words, he got tired of the political footballing of his ideas, so he quit Boeing and went in the bee business. And in no time at all, he was a huge commercial beekeeper.
Mm-hmm.
He was a migrator. He went to Texas, and he wasn't very far from where I was with the Gunter brothers. So when this issue with the queen cell cups came along, that was right up Jim Payson's alley.
Mm-hmm.
We scrambled around and got some Mexican cups, and they were exactly that. They were just cups. They didn't have that ring around there. Jim Payson came to us and asked us to be prototype evaluators of the plastic cups that he was designing. We said, sure, love to. So he brought us some of these cups that he made that were very similar to the Mexican ones. And we used them, but we said, Jim, you know, that big ring around the bottom of the cup is awful handy because it gives you a way to slide it when you're introducing, gives you, you know, you can push it into the side of the comb. And he shrugged and said, okay, I'll make them like that. And he dubbed it the Saturn ring, and that was it. So, yeah, that was.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And now I think he manufactures, or his company manufactures, a huge percentage of the cells cups that have been sold in North America.
I think that's the best selling queen cell cup around the planet. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Wow. And you were there at the beginning. You helped them design it. You told them what you needed, and you prototyped it.
Right.
That's really cool. That's really cool to be there. Imagine that some kid from a grocery store in North Dakota ending up running 1,800 colonies of bees, working for a guy with 10,000, and getting to know like what other business could you have gone into to have had that much fun and that much experience? You know, just life experience.
I'm very grateful that I bumped into the bees, Ron. I don't know what the heck else I'd have done with myself, but
That's
very
fantastic.
grateful.
Yeah,
So-
we're glad you did too. Bidzina, hi.
Yeah, so at this stage, this is the stage that I was talking about. So you're putting the cells inside of this frame here, and
Right.
so does this get built over by the worker bees? Then
Almost immediately they start.
almost,
Yeah.
and then
Yeah.
that gets placed inside of a colony that is producing a lot of milk. Royal jelly.
Yeah. It goes in the queenless portion. It's very strong and, you know, well fed, lots of pollen, lots of everything. And they jump on them. And if everything goes right, you get a really high percentage of hits.
Interesting. Very, very cool.
So, Bidzina, you're new at this. You've only been a couple of years, but you're learning so quickly. I want you to briefly summarize the steps that we've seen so far.
So the first things first is identifying a colony that's right for queen breeding.
Oh yeah.
Once you have identified a colony, then you find a frame inside that colony that has fresh laid of brood. Ideally, you want the entire frame to be covered in brood. Then you take
That
those fresh.
was a sign that it's a really good queen.
Yeah, that's the sign.
Right. It could be just a small patch of brood that you're going to be
Right.
grafting from, but I was just so amazed with the quality of this. Okay.
Right. So it's So you could use any brood, and then you take that wet baby brood just in that first day or two stage, right? I think it can't be older than 2 days.
We could use eggs, but you can't judge the age of an egg.
Okay.
An egg could be 3 minutes or 3 days old, right?
Yeah.
So we graft the tiniest larva,
Okay.
and therefore we know exactly that they're all the same age.
Okay. So you could go up to as 7 days old, 7 days old.
No, actually, the ones we graft are only maybe, I would guess, 6, 8, 10, 12 hours hatch from the egg.
Oh, I see.
We try to get them all the same size so that they all develop at the same time. Otherwise, they'd be hatching.
So the queen lays an egg, and then that egg hatches a larvae, which then emerges into a bee.
Right. So
Right. Oh, okay.
We-
So
we
that
try-
you get the egg stage. Okay.
right. And the key to grafting that larva is, they all the larvae get their first feeding is of royal jelly. It hasn't been watered down yet, right? So
Yeah.
they're transferred into a queen cell cup. Perfect. The workers just continue feeding them royal jelly.
Right. So yeah. So then the very early brood is transferred to a queen cell cup, which then is placed into a queenless colony.
Right.
A strong queenless colony with a lot of bees.
Right.
You got it. You caught us right up to the picture that we're looking at, and I don't think there's anything that would change in what you just explained. So that's a really good, clear summary. And the next picture, so you did this indoors, like you did this grafting so that you could control the temperature a bit, so you weren't getting rained on while you were doing it. And the next picture I include intentionally because I just love the scenery here. We show Steve just after grafting, carrying those cells back to the queenless hive that Bidzina described. And we're going through a gorgeous garden spot here. And you've already got things blooming. This is probably mid-April.
Maybe, yeah. Mid-April or maybe a little earlier, yeah.
Oh, even earlier. What a
Right.
beautiful garden. What a nice spot you have there, Steve.
Well, my friend Margaret has lived in this place for, I think, 45 years. So she's
It's beautiful. It's so nice. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, so you're carrying them now back to the colonies that are outdoors. You did the grafting indoors, back out, and then you.
So you can see the makeup here on the very top of that picture is the inside feeder. Next is a frame of honey and pollen, and then the frame of cells, and another frame of honey and pollen. And we don't want any more comb in there because that kind of forces the bees to collect where they need to be, is close to those cells. And you can see the bee power there. It's plenty strong.
Yeah.
Yeah. So over the top of that would go the double screen with the entrance to the back. And on top of that would go the 9 frames of brood and the queen. And so what happens is during that first few hours after you put the queen cells in, the field bees fly out. They fly back and join the cell hive box, make it even stronger. And you can't have too much bee power in there when those cells first go in. That first overnight is the crucial part to get them started and get them fed.
So approximately what time of the day did you typically do your grafting?
Well, I do it first thing in the morning to get it the heck out of the way So I got
Okay.
the rest of the day to go do other stuff. Yeah, I always do it first thing in the morning. You
Okay,
got the
why I'm
hives
asking, right, right. So why I'm asking that obviously is how long are they in there? When did so you leave them overnight?
overnight. First thing the next morning, you take the queen right part off, take the cell box off, put the queen right portion back on the bottom board, go through there and find 2 frames of very young brood. And I always mark the frames that I grafted from because those are really good candidates to go along the cells, right?
Mm-hmm.
So find 2 of those, replace them. The double screen is now finished. Knock the bees off the double screen and trade it for a queen excluder. Put a queen excluder over the bottom box where the queen and the brood is. Put the cell box on top of the queen excluder and put that frame of the 2 frames of baby bees on either side of that frame of queen cells. That draws more young royal jelly feeding bees up onto the queen cell cups. And you can see there, that's just overnight, and they've really got a good start at drawing out those queen cells. I can see 2 here that aren't being fed. One on the left, and maybe the third one from the right aren't being fed, but the rest are looking pretty good. When you
Yeah,
get a
it was a
perfect
good
frame, you
take.
take a picture, right?
Oh yeah, that's a good one. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, really good acceptance on your grafting. So this was at the 1 day point. We're looking at a picture now, folks, of after grafting, and the bees have started to draw wax around the plastic JZ-BZ cells, and they're starting to feed them. And because 2 of them in the picture don't have any new wax on them, then the assumption is that there's nothing happening in those 2.
Right.
Yeah. And this was at the next day when you're reconstructing your colony with the queen back on the bottom, the division board, or the, how do you call it? Divider screen?
Double screen.
Double screen
Yeah.
is gone.
Right.
But you replace that double screen with something.
A queen excluder.
Okay. And
Yeah.
that excluder is to make sure that the queen in the bottom box doesn't come up to the top box where you've put these cells. Because then they will certainly quit raising the cells and she will attack them.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So this was at 1 day after grafting, and this is about how many days after grafting?
They seal up at about day 6. So this is anywhere between 6 and 9, or I take them out at day 10. So this is probably somewhere between 6 and 9 days.
Okay. Between 6 and 9 days. But as long as they're sealed, and then you know what day they're at because that's important for knowing when they're going to emerge.
Yep.
Yeah. And now, is there a honey flow going? Because I see some burr
Yeah.
comb around them.
That nasty burr comb is a pain, and it certainly means there's a bit of a nectar flow going on. And what we do to fight that is we'll put frames of foundation on either side of the brood that's alongside the cells to sort of try to mitigate that burr comb a little bit. But
So what is the most queen cells you've had in a in one box, in one colony?
I try not to get too greedy. I put somewhere in the high 30s, I think, in each cell. There's people that will put a lot more in there, but if I put 38, if I start 38 cells and I get 30 or 32 or 33 cells finished, I'm happy as heck with that.
Yeah.
If we sold a lot of queen cells in my time down in Texas, and if people see nice big well-developed cells, they're happy to pay for them. If you hand them stubby little, not so nicely developed cells, they're not so happy to pay for them.
Right.
Right.
And the difference between a stubby cell and a big cell is?
It's obvious that the big ones are well formed, well fed. Yeah.
So you can get a queen that hasn't been fed very much. She'll emerge out of a smallish cell, and she'll still be a queen. She'll still mate and she'll still lay eggs, but there's going to be some difference.
Yeah. I can't tell you, but I just think they should all look good and mature and
I absolutely agree with you. I totally agree with you. I just wanted to let the audience be clear about the fact that they could have queen cells in a queenless hive. There's stubby little things, and they would emerge, and they would try to run a colony. They'll probably be superseded before you know it.
Right.
And you would want to normally destroy those and have cells that look more like a Steve cell,
Right.
which is as big as your thumb, and well fed, so that the queen is well developed.
Right.
That's good. Okay, so we've got burr comb all over the place, and here, I don't know if it's the exact same frame, but it is a frame that has had something similar happen with burr comb here and there, and you have to pull those cells off of the bars. So now we're back indoors again, folks. We have removed the finished queen cells from the cell building colony, brought them indoors. And the reason for this stage is, Steve?
Getting them ready to use. I think I told you, Ron, that when I worked down in Texas, we sold a lot of queen cells to smaller migratory beekeepers. We had a bunch of really nicely made cell boxes. If you took the seat material out of Dodge vehicles, it had perfectly punctured little holes in it, right? So we'd take cigar boxes, yeah. And when we started selling queen cells to other people, we'd put them in those boxes that we'd made, and please bring them back. Well, they didn't always come back, so I remember
you had to go out and buy more Dodge trucks. So you just have, like, you're constant, probably every year you buy 2 or 3 new trucks, so you have the foam material.
No, I remember this really clearly. One morning, my old partner, Larry Gunter, said, "You know what? We're going to start selling them guys queen cells in egg cartons." And I looked at him kind of funny, and we started doing it. We'd put 4 ripe cells in each egg carton, and we laughed because they'd always bring the egg cartons back. And that's how I do it today. I put them in egg cartons, and works really well.
I mean,
That's
right?
hilarious.
Why reinvent the wheel, right?
That's right.
It's meant for an egg.
That's right.
Well, there you go. Good point.
Yeah.
So from there, they will normally go into some sort of an incubator. And I don't have a picture of your incubator, but if people watch the video, which I highly recommend, they'll see how you put together that incubator. And briefly, what you have is, I can't remember now, a box, like a lunch box, a cooler of some sort.
You want to crunch up some newspaper, put it down in the bottom of a beer cooler, put a hot water bottle under, put the hot water bottle in first, then crunch up some newspaper for a bit of a buffer, put the egg carton full of cells in, toss a little thermometer in there, and keep an eye on the thermometer. A little cooler than the 90-degree thing is okay, but 100 degrees will kill them in no time flat. So you want to keep them, mid 80s to the low 90s, and they'll do just fine.
Mm-hmm.
We actually, when I worked in Texas, we would have some customers who live several hundred miles away. They would hire guys in small airplanes to come and pick those cells up, and we'd put them in the beer carton things, and yeah, worked just fine.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, they are at the right age before they open. They're as hardy as any insect that would be held in your hand or whatever. Like they can take some shaking and moving and jarring around because they're not developing anymore.
That's right. When they're 6 days old, they're still attached to that little puddle of jelly down there, and they're very fragile. You don't want to turn them upside down. You don't want to bump them. But when they're 9 going on 10 days old, they're pretty tough.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. This has been an amazingly good walkthrough of and what you do here on the west coast of British Columbia, Canada, about an hour and a ferry ride north of Vancouver. This system is basically the same system you used in East Texas when you learned how to raise queens, say 2,000 miles away and in an entirely different climate. So this is something that anybody almost anywhere could adapt and use in their backyard or in their hunting farm.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
So your area looks so gorgeous, so interesting, except for the rain. The video that you provided here that's on YouTube, it's raining kind of almost incessantly, but besides, it's okay. I'm almost done. I've got a dog here in my hands, and the dog is saying, you told me it would be just an hour, and here it's been over an hour and a half. I want to know, for all of those listening, and including me, what's a good time to visit you?
Anytime from April to October. We go to California for 5 months and tough out winter down in the desert around Palm Springs. But any other time, it's great. Yeah. And just to tell you, Ron, I'm looking at the thermometer. It's a beautiful sunny day out there right now, and 19 centigrade. So
where you are right now?
Right now,
that's gorgeous. And here
so it doesn't rain.
And we're recording here in late September, almost the last day of September, and you've got beautiful weather out there. Every bit as nice as we have here in Calgary today. That sounds really amazing. Yeah. Well, we would love to be able to come out there, and I just want to make a little bit of a shout out here for the fact that the landline number for you is 306-862-1384.
Right.
People can call that to order packages or cells, and you would usually have cells ready by the middle of May, I suppose, and nukes maybe in June.
I'd have nukes ready in late April because I feel like the best nuke is made with last year's queen.
Of course, yeah.
She's still got a lot of miles on her, so as soon as
she didn't do anything, all winter she's just been sitting.
Right. So as soon as I have ripe queen cells, I take that first nuke, requeen it, and a couple weeks down the road, have another one.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, that's really, really timely for us on the prairies and I guess around where you are. So what a beautiful overview. I just like all of this, and we're going to wrap up here pretty soon, but there's one more thing I wanted to talk about very briefly. I know that you've got other engagements coming up and you've got to move on here pretty quickly, but I have heard through the grapevine that there's a book coming out by Steve Clifford, and it will recount a lot of your experiences.
I have a gal who's going to be the editor. She's a retired university professor on the subject, and she does this for a living. She's convinced that we can make a saleable book. So when I get down to California next month, I'll start writing and hopefully have it done by spring. And so, yeah, fingers crossed it'll work out. Yeah.
Oh, I'm looking forward to that. I'm certainly going to want to buy that book and learn, see all the, I just know it's going to be full of a lot of useful information as well as a really good story. Just the way things were in your lifetime, and wasn't that long ago, but here we are.
Right.
Yeah. Bidzina?
Well,
what do you
Steve,
want?
I think you've broken a record on our podcast today. Our last record was a minute 45. 1 hour and 45 minutes long. That was our longest episode, and even with the cuts that we'll have to do for this episode, I think we've beaten that.
Well,
Ron, or
Well, I think it's more quality than quantity, and I think the quality of this talk and what I learned and what we saw was just phenomenal. And I've had a lot of people suggest that we try to hold our podcast down to about 45 minutes. So we've gone at least twice as bad as what people are asking for. But appreciate if anybody, yeah.
I think it's great. No, I think it's great. The quality is top notch, and we also have the quantity. You don't really get that nowadays. But it's no. I think it's great that I want to eventually. There's 3-4 hour podcasts that could be uploaded one day.
Yeah, nobody's going to download them though. I like what we covered today, Steve. Really appreciate it. And after 37 years or so, to catch up with you, to see you're doing well, you look great, and you're enjoying life. You're still producing a good product for people. And I mean, what more is there in our life than to try to you've produced millions of pounds of honey, and here you are producing thousands of queen cells and contributing in such a great way. And really, really appreciate this time we've had, and maybe we'll get you back and cover more, or maybe we'll make another similar one and just splice the two together, and Bidzina will be so thrilled that we'll suddenly have a 3-hour podcast. But I think it's time to wrap up. And Bidzina, do you want to take us home and invite people back? Yeah.
Yeah, no, thank you everyone for listening. Don't forget to check out Steve and all of the work that he's been doing for the beekeeping community, for Canada and internationally. And check us out every Monday, 8 a.m. Mountain Standard Time. Don't forget to like, subscribe, share. And audio podcast is available on all audio platforms: Apple, Spotify, iHeart Radio, wherever you like to listen to your stuff.
Fantastic. Thanks again, Steve.
Thank you, guys.
My
pleasure.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, everybody.